Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of Wes Craven Presents They, one of the most generic titles of all time, and it really fits because this movie is one of the most generic, forgettable pieces of shit that I've seen in recent memory. So the title is very apt. And you're probably wondering, of all the movies you could be reviewing, why are you reviewing this? Well, I'm one of the only people that has fond memories associated with this film. Not anymore after the most recent viewing, but I do remember watching this movie with my dad, and there's certain images that have stuck with me ever since, like the scene where the lead girl, played by Laura Regan, she pulls this spike out of her head. I remember that, and I remember for some reason the scene where she's getting ready to speak to her childhood psychiatrist, and she's talking with that little girl who's talking about, she's asking her questions about, have you experienced some of the same things, that are dealing with they, and the little girl actually does say she's experiencing and dealing with the same things, and she's drawing some stuff with a crayon on a piece of paper. So I remember that for some reason, like that, of all things, a very generic scene is burned in my memory for some reason. So for years, I wanted to revisit this because I had fond memories associated with it. This, my opinion on this film nowadays, now that I've seen it as an adult, is a prime example of how I'm not just nostalgic for certain films that I've seen when I was a kid, and that's the only reason why I like them still to this day. They're actually genuinely good movies, at least in my opinion. This I could easily have liked just for nostalgia, but no, it was boring as sin. It had a ending that I do admit was kind of different, but at the same time, it was way too many years too late for it to really have that much of an impact. And all these reviews, I think these people got paid off. Terrifying. Don't see it alone. Yeah, don't see it alone because you're guaranteed to fall asleep. That's why you shouldn't see it alone. Terror filled. A must see. Wireless magazine. There's probably a reason why no one's ever heard of Wireless Magazine. There's a reason why people don't hear from Wireless Magazine anymore, in terms of their opinions on what makes a good movie. One of the most terrifying endings in recent memory, New York Daily News. I don't know. I mean, if I gave a shit about the lead character, then maybe it would be terrifying. But since I don't, then I don't care. Even the poster is fucking generic and forgettable. You got you got you got this half face of this woman with the blank expression on her face, which sums up the film perfectly. Because I mean, that's what it is, a blank slate of a film. It's just blank. And you might as well be watching a blank DVD-R. You get the same sort of experience, the same enjoyment. First comes the warning, then comes the mark, then comes the terror. The terror never happens. The terror never comes. Trust me. Anyway, at least I don't think so. I know this film does have a little bit of a fan base, to each their own. I thought this was just your typical PG-13 horror film that has a concept that would only work for a 30-minute episode of The Twilight Zone or some horror anthology, but there isn't enough there for a feature-length film. And, yeah. Anyway, let's actually get into the review, shall we? And before I actually talk about my thoughts on the film, I want to actually talk about this film's production, which is kind of interesting, sort of in terms of its production history. For one, the screenplay is written by Brendan William Hood, well, according to the credits, anyway. But really, Brendan William Hood wrote an original draft, which is a rough draft, which was then purchased by Dimension, and Focus Feature, I think Focus Features, and they decided, okay, let's make this into a movie. They, and we're gonna call it They. And the producers also decided they didn't like his script, which is actually kind of interesting because Brendan William Hood's original script concept for this film was something like this. The plot dealt with a group of 4 recent college graduates who discover that the Earth is actually run by a race of organic machines, kind of like the Matrix, which allow the human race to exist so that they can kill them and harvest their corpses for spare parts as their bodies break down and deteriorate. I thought it was interesting. I really would like to know what producer thought that idea was horrible and decided, well, let's not do that. Let's make the most generic, fucking half-assed, lazy-ass, fucking cliched, boring movie imaginable. Let's do that instead. And that's going to be a box office gold. Well, it wasn't. They was a box office bomb. It was a flop. It was made on a budget of $17 million. I really would like to know where the $17 million went, because this looks like at best a $2 million film, or a $1 million production, or even less than that. And it made $16 million in the box office, which to me is honestly too much. So, yeah, Dimension and the producers, they decided, nope, let's not go with that script. And so they wrote out everything. They completely just crossed out everything that Brendan Hood did, but still put his name on the movie, even though this film is literally almost nothing like his script. And then they got 10 other people to work on the script. And only one of them was credited for the revised script. Everybody else was not credited at all. So you had 10 different fucking writers who wrote They, and neither one of them, not a single one of the 10 could come up with a script that didn't suck. I mean, I was absolutely stunned when I found out that there was 10 different writers who worked on this film. And if you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're like, 10 different writers? It took 10 writers to come up with the script for this movie? So, yeah, that's what I'm talking about by the production history. I thought that was kind of an interesting sort of bit of trivia I wanted to definitely throw out there. And, so yeah, the film was directed by Robert Harmon, who I can't believe he directed this. This is the same director of The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer, which is a classic, and it's hard for me to fathom that he directed this. It really is. But nope, he did. He directed They, and he didn't have a lot to work with, so I guess the film's failure isn't necessarily entirely his fault. There were some good-looking shots, though, so the director, you could clearly see he knew what he was doing. He just had nothing to work with. He had a shit script, and that 10 different writers couldn't fix. The first 5 minutes or so, or I thought the first sequence was pretty well directed and somewhat suspenseful, and it kind of started off fairly on the right foot, and then it just fell flat on its ass all the way down the hill. And it was a big hill. So yeah, it just fell hard after that. It went downhill. It has a score by Elia Camaro. There's not a single musical note that is at all memorable from this score. Cinematography by Rene Ohashi. At times, there's some, like I said, there's some nice looking shots. The sequence in the subway near the end of the film is well shot. The sequences of the alternate world that they live in was actually was fairly well shot. But that's more of an effects thing, really, than cinematography, because I think that was a CGI effect, completely a computer-generated image. So, I don't know if I give the cinematographer the credit for that. But yeah, I mean, Robert Harmon, he's clearly done better, and I know he can do better, and that's what's so frustrating about it, is that he's stuck with this movie. He's stuck with the shitty script. He can't do anything with it. And then he pretty much, thankfully though, he went on to do the film Highwaymen a year later, which is a lot better, which showed you how talented Robert Harmon is as a director. So things worked out. But Highwaymen wasn't a hit either, so he then was just stuck to directing Jesse Stone films with Tom Selleck. So TV movies. And that's Tom Selleck, by the way, not Ta Selleck. I don't know who the fuck Ta Selleck is. Or Toe Selleck. Uh, so the film features a cast of Laura Regan, who before this, I don't think she really did that much. And then she didn't do that much after this, for good reason. Oh, she was in Hollow Man too. Great. That's the next film. She didn't get a single starring role in any movie or supporting role in any film for like 4 years after they, for good reason, because she's horrible in this. And the next film that she was in was Hollow Man 2, which is another shitty film. Another horror film that isn't scary and is boring and is lackluster and is generic. She plays there's also Jessica Amelie, who plays the young Julia, because Laura plays the old grown-up Julia. Marc Lucas plays Paul Loomis. I know I know he was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something. He should stick to TV, or maybe he was never that great of an actor to begin with. Not very good. I thought he was just off throughout the entire film, just like Laura Regan. So these are your your two leads, and they're both off. But you have Ethan Embry, who plays Sam Burnside. He was like the one actor in this I thought actually was good, and then everyone else was just not really that great or didn't leave that much of an impression. Dagmara Dominczyk as Terry, she was hot, she was sexy, but her performance is very uneven. At times it was okay, and other times she's trying to tell this story of when she was a kid that was really terrifying. She does it in a way that's just what I like to call try hard. So she's trying too hard to make this dramatic, and it just really falters. It fails so hard because she's clearly, the illusion is shattered because you can tell that she's acting. Then you have Jon Abrahams, who plays Billy, who he's not really in it that much to really leave that much of an impression, like most of anybody in this cast. And really like the film itself. So, one of the biggest problems I have with the script and with the story, other than how generic and cliched and dull it is the fact that we never really know what they are. We don't know what these creatures are. We don't know what their motivations are. We don't know what the point of these creatures is. All we know is that these creatures like to tag people when they're kids, and then for some reason, years down the road, they decide to come back and then harvest them, or take them away, or kill them. I don't know. Either way, it's not really that interesting to begin with, because we just have the bare minimum. You just have the bare minimum here, the bare ass. You have the bare ass, the bottom of the barrel in terms of the storytelling, in terms of the material to work with. So the movie starts out with, like I said, a pretty good opening sequence. It's a flashback in 1983, dealing with this young boy named Billy, who is played by Alexander Gould. And he's frightened. He's having difficulty falling asleep after waking up from a nightmare. And his mother, Mary, played by Desiree Zarowski, she comes in to comfort him, to make him feel better, and assures him the monster he thinks is in the closet doesn't exist. It's imaginary. He tries to go back to sleep, and then again he sees a dark, shadowy thing in his closet staring at him, and then he pulls the covers up on top of himself and turns on a flashlight, And as he peeks outside the covers, he is captured and then spirited away by the mysterious thing, this creature. There's some decent suspense there, well shot, well edited, well put together. All right, okay. And what I find weird is that the movie opens up with a flashback with Billy, but he's not the main character. It's Laura Regan's character, Julia Lund. Because after this opening sequence, which is pretty strong, then it flashes forward to present day 2002. The plot then starts to focus on her character, and it just doesn't work because she doesn't have the charisma. She doesn't have. She's not a leading lady. She has no leading lady material, she really doesn't have any leading lady material, and she absolutely does not have that potential. Or at least she doesn't show it. So she's dealing with this stuff because as a child she also experienced these night terrors that manifested after seeing her father kill himself, but she's seemingly overcome this because now she's trying to become a psychologist. She reunites with her childhood friend and now grown-up Billy, played by Jon Abrahams. And this is where you had like one of the few moments in this script that was any good. I wonder which one of the 10 writers came up with this dialogue. Billy's talking to Julia. They're sitting in a diner or a coffee house of some sort, and he's telling her how kind of like the rules of how these creatures work, and I thought it was actually decent line delivery by the actor who played Billy, and I liked this idea. I like this quote here where he's talking about these creatures. He's like, when you hear a baby crying or you hear a kid crying, you keep moving, okay? Children can sense them. It's your warning. And here's Julia. Warning against what? Also, they affect the electrical things. They affect the lights and the phones. They affect things. And I thought that was okay. When the idea of, oh, babies can see these creatures, but we can't. I think it's kind of an interesting sort of quote, interesting thing. They don't do much with it though, so. Because then soon afterwards, Billy shoots himself. He kills himself. I guess the guy was like, I'm getting out of this movie while I'm ahead. I'm just, boom, let's just get this shit over with. So, yeah, he kills himself, and then you're relegated to Laura Regan as the lead, and her bad acting, her stilted acting, her reaction to when when her friend shoots himself is just stiff as a board. He shoots himself right in front of her, and she's like, there's no like, oh my god, none of that. Just that's totally her reaction to that. I guess people react to things differently. I guess that's her way of dealing with it. I don't know. And it doesn't help that later in the film, she has no chemistry with this boyfriend guy that she has. And they have moments where they're sharing lines, and they both aren't good actors, so it's really hard to watch, especially when she's supposed to emote. It's reminds me of Mark Wahlberg in The Happening. It was like, you eye on my lemon drink? What? No! It's that kind of bad acting, and instead of, it's like the female Mark Wahlberg over here. She's all like, what? No! No! Nah. So anyway, it's, yeah, the movie's only 89 minutes too. It's not very long, but it feels long. It drags so much. And it is a drag. It's a total drag. Uh, so yeah, Billy kills himself. Julia stays over with her boyfriend Paul, played by Marc Lucas, trying to get over, the grief. As she's asleep, she's awakened by the ringing of Paul's phone, and she answers it, but there's no one on the other line. She then hears a shower running, but there's no one inside. And then this is a kind of effective sequence. She goes in and she opens the medicine cabinet, and there's like this black ooze. And actually, she sees this black fluid erupt from the sink drain earlier, and it freaks her out, understandably. And then she goes to the bathroom mirror, the medicine cabinet. She opens it, and then sees that there's this alternate dimension inside with mysterious creatures. Which honestly, when she did that, I thought the terror dog from Ghostbusters are gonna go show up and go Zool, and she was gonna go ah, and then just close the medicine cabinet door. Sounds like she needs to call the Ghostbusters. They'll take care of whatever they'll take care of for her. Uh, they'll take care of they. So yeah, I mean it starts out as a slow burn, but it never, and I don't mind slow burn movies if they're done right. This is an example of that being done right because it doesn't build any suspense because you don't like this character, you don't care about what happens to her, and it's not really that much fun to watch either. So anyway, she sees one of the creatures. Uh, you also see this weird effect where her fingers start to fuck, like they start to fuck up, like they start like bending and breaking on their own because of the slime or whatever that she grabbed, and then she attacks her boyfriend because she's freaked out, and then nothing really comes of that. She goes to the funeral for Billy. She consoles his parents. She then meets up with Billy's friends and roommates, Terry and Sam, played by Dagmara and Ethan. Dagmara Dominczyk and Ethan Embry. And they actually start to believe the claims because that Billy was saying and wrote in his diary because they also experienced night terrors as children, and they suspect that they're returning. Offended by saying, then Julia gets offended by a comment from Sam, and she gets out of there. She visits Billy's room, discovers he has a drawer full of Energizer and Duracell batteries, which reminded me of a scene in Darkness Falls, and that film actually is 10 times better than this. So it just reminded me of a better movie, which is never a good thing. Terry then shows up, apologizes for Sam's insensitivity, and who gives a fuck. Then it just becomes a generic stalk and slash movie where these creatures, who I admit they did a good job keeping them in the shadows so they didn't give a lot away, but they're in the shit, and then it becomes a stalk and slash flick where Sam and Terry just get picked off one by whatever they is. There's a lame scene where Julie's driving in the middle of nowhere in a car, and a radio starts to malfunction. She sees one of the creatures sprint across the windshield. The car stops on its own. She then sees another one in the lake. She tries to fix the car, but then she stumbles onto the road and then almost gets hit by a truck. Then she tries to tell her boyfriend about this, and then I don't know if it's just me, but I swear there's a line of dialogue in this film where the lead guy, he says, the paramedic boyfriend, he says this, because he's talking to Julie, he's like, trying to get some information from her, and he says this line, he says, "Did you hit to something?" I'm like, did I really seriously hear him say, "Did you hit to something?" I think I did. And I rewound it multiple times and I heard the same thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm hearing things. But if that is true, that's terrible. That's a hallmark of a shitty movie right there because I didn't even bother to. It's like the sound editor didn't give a shit when he was editing the film. Or the director didn't give a shit. Or nobody gave a shit about they. They didn't give a shit. So about they. So they're like, well, you didn't say the right line. Well, fuck it. We don't have time to dub it. We don't have time to do a retake. I mean, how can you not notice that? How can you not notice somebody saying, instead of "did you hit something," "did you hit to something"? So, but yeah, so it's just who cares? It's just boring. It's so fucking boring. And like I said, it's trying to build suspense, but it doesn't work because you don't like any of these characters. You don't care about any of these people. So Terry and Sam, they study Billy's diary some more. They ask Julia if she's experienced any return in the night terrors. Julia denies them, but really she has been doing that. Then you have a flashback to when she was a little girl, and these night terrors. I guess she had it shows you these night terrors that she had, and the same sort of things that Billy saw. And Julia's at first she's skeptical. But then she starts to believe in her friend's stories after meeting a little girl who is Sarah, who I think is played by it's Jodelle Michah Ferland, who has been in other movies. Like she was in Silent Hill. She was in that film. Yeah, she played Sharon De Silva and Alessa. So this is one of her first roles before she was in that. And I'm not really the biggest fan of Silent Hill, the movie, but I definitely would say I think it's better than they. That's not saying much, though. So now Sarah starts to believe all this stuff. One of her psychiatrist patients, the girl Jodelle Michah Ferland, also suffers some night terrors, and which started after her mother's death. She claims that they are going to get her and they're going to eat her. And she says the only thing that keeps them away is lights. Then she starts picking away at a strange mark on her arm, similar mark that was appeared on Billy's hand, Sam's shoulder, and Terry's ankle. Julia starts to believe all these stories. She tries to look for the mark herself, tries to get her boyfriend to look for it. He doesn't find anything. Then she eventually finds the mark, and the mark that she has is on her forehead. And that's where she pulls like a spike out of the mark. And that was actually a pretty freaky scene, and that's one of the few things about the movie I didn't mind. One of the actual effective sequences in the film. She then runs to Paul's apartment out of fear. Paul is completely convinced that she's nuts. He tries to drug her. Paul tells her everything will be okay if she falls asleep, but he attempts to call Dr. Booth. Realizes she drugged her, she can't risk falling asleep. She escapes his apartment and runs to the subway station to vomit the sleeping pills on the tracks, only to get trapped in the station as the closing gates lock her in. And this sequence was well shot, well edited. The cinematography was good. I liked the lighting. It was dark and dingy. It was efficiently creepy. And that's where you actually see the creatures, more of the creatures. And sometimes they're done practically, other times it's CGI that doesn't really look that great nowadays. So she's forced to ride a train home, but then she's the only passenger on the train, which makes her freak out, understandably. Train's lights start to flicker, the vehicle stops. She gets off, sees all the light bulbs burst in the train tunnel. Train automatically stops, abandons her, and then the creatures start to assault her. She's attacked by all of these creatures, like a whole horde of them, in the darkness, in the tunnel, but she manages to escape. She's discovered by a group of engineers who try to help her, but she violently freaks out and assaults them with a shard of glass because she thinks they're not human. She then gets sent to a mental institution by her psychiatrist, Dr. Booth, and by her boyfriend, where she is attacked once again and then transported into a separate dimension that she previously saw when she opened the medicine cabinet, only this time inside of a closet. She screams for help towards Dr. Booth and an orderly, but they can't see her. And then the closet door is shut by Dr. Booth, and the creatures proceed to attack her. Which I don't know why they had to wait for this twist ending to do that, because they could have just done the same thing when they were attacking her earlier, but whatever. So I think it's because light was flashed on them, shown on them, or whatever. So this is the ending. That's a twist. That's the terrifying ending. And I'm like, I've seen that done a million times in a million episodes of The Twilight Zone and other things, and I admit it's well shot and it's somewhat memorable, but it's not like, oh man, like that's such a great ending. I don't think it's a great ending because it just makes the film pointless. They was pointless. Oh well, they got her anyway, so who gives a shit? I didn't like her anyway, so it didn't matter to begin with. And this film also apparently has two other different endings as well. You have the alternate ending, which is on the DVD on this DVD. This is where Julia wakes up in a hospital bed. She goes to the door. She finds it locked. She looks through the small glass window. She sees that all the people in her story, Dr. Booth, Billy, Sam, Terry, they're all patients Of course, you know, this typical twist ending where, oh, she's crazy. And that's the whole thing. She's crazy. Everything that we saw in this film was just a delusion. It was all scenes from her deluded mind. I'll take the ending where they actually exist and drag her into this other dimension versus she's just crazy any day of the week. And I guess that's the original ending that Robert Harmon wanted to go with, and I'm sorry, Robert. I love The Hitcher, but that's not a very good ending, and it's been done before, so it's not like it's anything new. And then the other ending is this. There was a third alternate ending filmed where Julia convinces the doctors that she's all right, even though she can still see them, you know, the creatures crawling on her walls. She then goes home to her own bedroom, which is rigged up with dozens of lights. She sits with a flashlight in her hands as the camera slowly begins to move down the hallway and the closet door starts to open. It's thought that this ending might have been for test screenings, and it has not shown up anywhere on DVD or Blu-ray. I think it might have shown up on some TV versions of the film as well, overseas, because I've read some message boards that they say they kind of saw that ending, or I could be mistaken. That one, another just typically cliched, it's not over yet type ending. So, that's they. And to be honest, they didn't do a very good job. The 10 different writers for this film, Robert Harmon, I mean, I guess he did the best he could, but, you know, he is kind of, you know, he might have been able to add a little bit more inputs to make this film better than it is. I guess the creatures are designed by Patrick Tatopoulos, who's done effects for Independence Day and Godzilla. Even the creatures themselves were just kind of generic looking. They weren't really anything. Wow, like I'm definitely going to remember that design. You didn't see that much of them anyway in order to really have much of there really wasn't a lot of them to really have much of an impact or really to see what they look like or make much of a determination on how effective the design is. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about this movie. I've gone on for over 30 minutes, which is longer than any review of this film probably has ever gone before, but I just wanted to just get all my thoughts out, and it's just such an underwhelming, generic, boring movie. It's your typical PG-13 film where you just have a boring stock and slash movie with a lame lead, characters you don't give a shit about for the most part, who then get picked off in pretty much the same way. They're alone. They show up and attack them or knock them off screen or something because it's PG-13 and we can't show any gore or blood or violence. And I don't even know why Wes Craven's name is even associated with this. He isn't even a producer on this. Wes Craven present. They should this Wes Craven has nothing to do with this. They just put his name on they in order to get people to see they. And you know what? They didn't see they. Even with Wes Craven's name erroneously placed on this film's poster or DVD or VHS. More like DVD because it was probably not very many people probably saw this on VHS. I think that's how I saw it though. With my dad was on VHS. Anyway, yeah, I don't have anything else to say about they. They was a piece of shit. It was a boring, cliched horror film it was about as generic and blank and faceless and forgettable as this movie's cover art. So anyway, I don't know what to say about the movie except rate it out 5 stars. I give it 1 for that opening sequence that Robert Harmon did. There's a couple memorable, creepy moments. The scene in the subway, the scene where she pulls the spike out of her head, and the ending. You know, it is pretty bleak and not really scary or really particularly original. But I thought the idea of these interdimensional beings going in from their dimension into ours was kind of a novel concept. They didn't do that much with it though, and I wish they explained what they was doing. what these creatures were doing to begin with. Um, but you know, they did. But then the fucking producers came in and were like, nope, sorry, Brendan. We don't want that idea because that's good. We want to make everything generic and fucking forgettable, and want to make it more like The Ring or whatever, all these other popular PG-13 horror films that had come out around the same time. Anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on They. Take it and take them or leave them, and I don't know what else to say except thanks for watching. And I know I repeated myself. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say. I do now. I do know what else to say. And that's thanks for watching my review, and I'll see you guys later. See ya.